The next piece that I really want to dive into now is your financial planner who has transitioned out of the military. What do you think are some of the biggest pitfalls that military members fall into or should try to avoid when it comes to financially preparing to leave the military?
Yeah, great question. And there's a lot of them, but I guess I'll just pick a few. So I guess one of the main ones and overarching ones would be like not understanding right. Everyone just like everyone's so 99% of everyone's energy when they're transitioning is on job search, resume. How do I figure out how to get a job, network? Like you said, go on LinkedIn, spend hours a day. Nobody's really thinking about like, okay, what is the salary, and then like what is the actual take home pay, and how does that compare to my take home pay now? Because taxes change. All of a sudden, I might be moving states. Maybe I can't claim Texas as my state anymore. Like the whole time I'm in the military, like you can just pick a state with no tax and claim that. Right now, we don't have BAH and BAS. Like taking all these things into account, all the insurance, like probably need more life insurance. You're not going to have SGLI anymore. Something you need to, so that would be, I guess, dovetailing into another one. Try to do that before you transition and go down this VA claims route. Because a lot of times when we get into this last year, we start going to the doctor a little bit more. All of a sudden, we go to the VSO. We put in our VA claim. We're claiming XYZ, and all of a sudden, all this stuff's in our medical records. And I did a life insurance application because I got my insurance before I went to my VA claim. And they asked me on the application, like, have you ever claimed VA benefits? And I could truthfully answer no, because at the time I hadn't. So that's one I would say is key to do like earlier rather than later. But again, going back to like the income difference, I think that's a big one. And then just like introspection about like what's the life you actually want to live. A lot of people getting out are going to have pension, maybe even disability income. They're going to be able to have some decisions to make about how much they really need to make or work. I think a lot of folks, especially like the high achieving E7, E8, E9, O5 and above types, they're making good money in the military. They're important. They want to get out and think that they have to be important in the civilian world and make all this money and work all these hours. And it's, I guess, do some thinking about like, and some math about what is enough for me and my family. Like, do I actually have to go work a job, or can I figure something out that pays me some money, but maybe I don't have to work 40 hours a week? So that whole income conversation, how much do I really need to make instead of just going job chasing, includes some math, but also some qualitative sides. And then I would also say just like great time to like take a look at your state documents. If you don't have them, obviously get those in place. But when you're getting out, things are changing. You're changing states sometimes. Probably another really good time to update those. Especially if you have kids, super important to be naming the guardian of your children if something happens to you in your will. But yeah, so those are the big ones. But your income, your insurance situation, your estate documents, certainly like your investment, sure, all that's always important. But those are, I guess, those would be the biggest ones during your transition.
Are there any thoughts or factors to consider when it comes to starting a business versus being an employee
Mm-hmm.
in your perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So one thing I didn't mention when you asked me what was important during transition, kind of the foundation of that kind of whole project of transition is cash flow analysis. So what are we bringing in and what are we spending on a monthly basis, like from that 6 month out to like 6 months settled almost would be, because that things are going to change, expenses are going to change. We already talked about how take home income's going to change, because that there might be a huge excess of money there or a huge deficit. And we got to figure out how to plug those gaps. So I guess going into that business, do I start a business conversation? You need to think about your personal financial situation. Like not everybody's really in the position to start a business. I'll just use myself as an example. I started a business in 2019. Oh, I guess 2020, late 2020. Okay. 2021, my wife and I, we weren't married yet. We were engaged, but no kids, no debt. I think we were both renting at the time. Like Like we're maxing out our TSPs, like no overhead, right? So like we're me starting this business in a career field that it doesn't have massive startup costs. Like sure, I've got expenses, but it's not like I'm buying a building and I'm buying supply and like it's a service business that's virtual and I do it from home. So not crazy startup costs, so that helps. But then like I guess like looking at the success rate of businesses, I think that's important. So like again, for me, in the field that I was going into, XY Planning Network is a network of advisors that, or a network that helps advisors early on, fee only advisors like myself, like help them from 0 to 3 years really get their feet off the ground. I'm still a member of it. I think it's excellent. But, anyways, they put out a lot of benchmarking studies about how long it takes to actually grow to like a livable income and make a profit and all that. And they really say it takes like 3 or 4 years. Like if you can sustain 3 or 4 years of losses and not really taking an income, you can make it. So, I looked at my timeline. I'm like, well, I'm in 2021. We'll have an income till at least 2025 because my wife's got a service commitment. So I've got 4 years. Like I'm just gonna put my head down and do this thing. So I had a good background in terms of what we had done financially so far. I had the data to confidently say, hey, I think this thing can work. So I think with those two pieces, like I had enough to go do that thing, and it has worked, and I have been able to more than replace my income now. But I guess going back to like that business planning, it does start with, all right, we need some serious liquidity. Like how long is this going to take to turn a profit? How much is this going to take on a monthly basis? Can we take a look at, can we cut our expenses? Can we tap other sources of liquidity? Like, is a HELOC an option? Is maybe taking a TSP loan, 401k loan an option? Taking a distribution from their IRA? I hear planners in my business that are totally successful now, but they're like, yeah, I took all of my money out of retirement, like 6 figures, and started my financial planning business to fund those first 3 years. And they're like, it's the best decision I ever made. They're like, I have the life I want. This is amazing. But like, it's easy to say that looking back, and how many people did that and didn't make it? I don't know. So that's where you got to think about the personal risk. Like, okay, if this doesn't work, what's my fallback? And again, for me, that was, okay, I could just stay in the military, or okay, I'll just go get a job in hospital administration. It wasn't detrimental to my financial future because I wasn't cashing out my retirement. I had really properly balanced the risk portion of that equation. So it all comes down to, I guess, long story short, liquidity, income and expenses, and your personal risk, and kind of how much you've done so far. I think starting a business at 22, much more risky, I guess, because you're probably not that stable than starting one at 35 or 40 when you've got 500k in a 401k.